Hey, Peggy, how are you? Good. I'm meeting with Bailey at OREC on the 28th, and she's going to do a training for me on this work.
Like in person?
For you guys, is this like Zoom? Because I'm being that Zoom, she's got to show me.
Can I sit down?
Hell yeah.
Okay.
I'll send you it.
Yeah.
I'll send you an invite.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We can do it
Because
at our
I
interview.
all I do is sit on there and go, click, 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 click.
Well, then I have to go in and, you know, okay, so I got, we got a password. Oh, yeah. She was really upset.
Stop, Hannah.
So I think that I told her versus to just have her outline to me, maybe an idea of how much money, just even just to see
Right.
that she has closed and how much she has paid. And how we're going to do this again.
Our rules and regulations said that when it's a violation, you go to the.
Well, and what's really was crazy is like, you know, when she closes anything in December, I figured there's something that's the problem, she said, is part of this other thing is so everyone for everybody.
But the signature, two signatures are on it. I don't care what she was, but what she, who wrote it.
She might tell me how else would she find her? Because she's one of those. She, I mean,
All you do is show
and see, she doesn't even have, she had nothing, like no reason at all, and even if court was saying, well, that's not good, I think, how do you know? There's nothing in writing. And it was a picture. Who else can you family? Really? Like, it's supposed to be writing down your face. I'll send you the invitation for the Google thing, but,
yes.
know that when you talk to her, should you see everything?
I can't see.
Oh, I don't know how to do it. So
Well,
that's,
I go into the thing I said, and it says like, pending commissioner agreement request. Pending.
oh, so you do have something.
Pending commissioner agreement request, and I put it on, says you have that pending. So.
And so we had eight called people. Where are we on this? Where are we?
It'll say pending agent, and what we probably put on right now, says you have none. You're telling me that,
Well, no, because Bailey said she's going to approve it for them.
yeah,
On the ones that they just approved through, and she said,
yeah,
we're gonna, it's not, we figure it out.
it's supposed to be, like I said, I won't say the same in a week, but it's supposed to be like, click on that, and it should list down when you approve, it's not.
Well, we went up, I was talking with Penny at KBR, she said, Stephanie, this is now what you can do to the students that have licenses activated. They will send a reminder to the board, whichever board you wish to take, and whichever one of them, by the way, I think we need to do this stuff, so I don't know.
Wow, crazy.
I know, right? I'll send you the link for the invite.
Sounds good, thank you.
I don't know.
I went with someone with Autumn, but she said that she had to go home. So
Oh.
I was not on this class, because I don't even know when to take it.
Yeah, I'm excited. It is for sure. There's tomorrow maybe a contracts class too?
I know, I wish I didn't have to work this whole time.
Yeah.
I told my husband last night, or last night or the night before, I was like, we're gonna, like, either have to decide if I'm gonna do it for full system or.
Yeah.
Like, it's just way too hard to do both.
Yeah. That's kind of how I am too, still working and stepping out.
Yeah, see, I didn't know that you were still working.
Yeah.
It makes it so hard.
Yeah, because it's like you have that on your mind when you know that you need to be focused on this, you can still do this, but it's like it's not working, you should be doing it. Yeah, I'm sure they'll do that too.
And then it's like,
But I know maybe
yeah, and then it's like a hospital too, and then it's stressful because I'm like, I guess I'm 6 months to have, like, do my license, and it's like, that's a year. And I'm like, I do it all whenever you pass your test.
I think that they get to pass the test, but I understand it.
Yeah, there's just a weird thing, right, so I'm 2 months.
This is fun. I'm gonna erase Karina's stuff. Sorry, Karina.
You always wonder sometimes you come in and you look at the scribbles on the board and go, what are they talking about?
Yeah. I can tell by looking at this one, this was CNA. Hi, how are y'all?
At least you don't really want to put them on that road.
Maybe it's real.
I wonder if there's a way to flag them so they don't count against you. Stranger, how are you?
A little bug, so.
Okay, let me get everything up and everybody in. Hopefully everybody at home can hear me. I went through like 20 minutes the other day on a Zoom before somebody told me I was on mute. I was like, was the arms flailing around the other side? She's talking, I can't hear her. Oh. Find out why the screen's not duplicating. Oh, there it goes. I'd think about it. Okay, so there will be no handouts, obviously, for this. This is a lot of discussion. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, I'm Miranda.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I think I know everybody else. So TRR negotiations. The reason I wanted to start, what we're going to start doing with our contracts class, with the purchase contracts and listing contracts, because we have them on the YouTube channel, we're going to be alternating every single month. So things that you need to know about a contract. So this month for January, we're going to do TRR negotiations. February will be the basic in-person purchase and listing contracts. You can always go back and watch the video or come in and do the in-person course. And then in March, we'll cover contingencies. So it'd be like some other little, part of contracts, because there are so many different ways to put a contract together and to end a contract in so many small little pieces. So we're talking about TRR negotiations today because this is pretty vital as far as, hey Tom, as far as your getting your contract to the finish, which is the ultimate goal. And we put our clients in a car, we put them on drips, we do these campaigns with them. We have so many meetings, we drive them around and throw them show them the 30 best houses that they thought they wanted to see, get everything under contract, which may have been a back and forth process, and then have things fall apart when it gets to the TRR negotiations, which it's so deflating, you kind of feel like you're starting over. at that point. So I wanted to kind of hit some of the highlights with this. Every TRR is not going to end in roses. I'm just going to say that up front. There's really sometimes no way to save things. If the roof needs to be replaced and the hot water tank stops working and that HVAC won't blow, I mean, it's just, unless the seller is willing to do everything, it just may not happen. But sometimes the agents are the cause of why TRRs don't get finished out. So let's go through that. Very first thing I want to talk about is, what does the actual word negotiations even mean? So because we get a little, whoops, change my, hold on, I messed it up. Okay, so anyway, the word negotiations, we want to talk about what the actual definition of that, because for a very, very long time in real estate, especially if you talk to people that have been in real estate very long, it's like whoever wins the battle. It's like, you know, seriously going to war. I'm going to ask for this. And they think they have to do this back and forth kind of bashing thing where everybody's just like, if my client doesn't take all, it's not successful. Well, that's not really what negotiations would be. So I want you to think, when you think of negotiations outside of the real estate industry, what are some other areas, some other industries that actually, you know, that they have people who do nothing but specialize in negotiations?
Democrats and Republicans.
There you go. We've been watching.
They don't do it very well.
Yeah. So let's talk about other successful areas.
Divorce.
So divorce attorneys are experts in negotiations. So you have corporate attorneys who do, that is their specialty, to go in and negotiate contracts. It's not about getting everything that their client wants. It's about getting a lot of the things that their client wants. I think getting everything that your client wants is probably setting yourself and your clients up for failure. So just be really careful with that. Another thing I always think of when I think of negotiations is hostage negotiators. So it can't be all or nothing. You know, you're not getting any of this, or the person's not going to make it out of whatever the situation is. So the actual definition of negotiations, a strategic discussion that resolves an issue. The issue in this case is going to be the repairs, in a way that both parties find acceptable. So at the end of the day, your goal in negotiating a TRR is to get a lot of what you want, but be willing to give up some of the things that you can live without. Okay. All right, so let's talk about an accepted offer. There are a lot of contingencies that are built into every single contract. From when your client first puts a house under contract, whether that you're working with the buyer or you're working with the seller, all the way to the day of close, you've got a lot of contingencies. Can you think of any contingencies off the top of your head?
Appraisal, inspection.
Inspections, appraisals, what else? Financing, that's huge. If they're getting a loan on it, you got to have some financing. So anything else that you can think of?
Previous home selling.
Okay, that could be an actual real contingency. Most of the time when you ask people, what are your contracts contingent upon? They say that right there. They go, oh, they don't have a house to sell. Okay, well, that's not the only contingency that's in our contracts. What is a contingency? What is the definition of a contingency?
This will happen if this happens.
Okay, so if this, and we're going to flip the script on that, if this doesn't happen, then this will not happen. So in your case, I have a house to sell. If it doesn't, I can't buy this one. So, but there are a couple of contingencies that are built into our contracts, and if they're not successfully completed, this contract will not close. It will not execute. So the very first one that we come across, if we're just running through our contract, is 3 days to deliver the earnest money. So if you have an accepted contract and your seller doesn't receive the earnest money in the location it's supposed to be within 3 days of acceptance, that is a contingency. Does your seller now have the right to cancel their contract? Yes. Okay. Second contingency is what Kristen mentioned, is the loan approval of financing. If your client could be 100% fully approved when they first start, they've got 5 days to get their docs into the lender, they've done everything they're supposed to, and then 2 days before closing, they lose their job. Is that going to get them off the hook for having to close this transaction? Yep. because that is a contingency. They have to be able to qualify for the loan. And without employment, you're not qualifying for the loan. So that's kind of a built-in contingency if you have people that are financing. And then as Terry mentioned, the appraisal. So if a house does not appraise for the contract price, there is no obligation, bless you, to sell this property. So if a contract, if it appraises for less than value, is the seller obligated to come down to that price? Nope. They could say, sorry, that's the price I want to sell it for. If you want it, that's what you're going to come up to. So sometimes, you know, we're already negotiating before we even start the repair negotiation. Can I have additional days on delivery of the earnest money? So maybe there's, you know, the house, something needs to happen. I need to get gift money from grandma on the loan financing. And then of course the appraisal. We also have to negotiate clear title. So sometimes our contracts are built in to say that we have an automatic 30-day extension if you don't change it to clear up any clouds on the title. So if it doesn't get cleared up in 30 days, your buyers and sellers are going to be negotiating on whether that's going to need to be extended or not. And then of course we talked about the inspection period, which we're going to get into in depth in just a moment. And then the time frame for negotiating the repairs, which is 7 days between the time we submit a repair list. But again, we'll talk about that in just a second. And then the close date can sometimes be negotiable. So whether you're negotiating that it close early or whether you need to negotiate an extension for it to go past that close date. Okay, so let's talk about this. When should negotiations in a contract start? In your opinion, when do you feel like the negotiations in a contract actually start kicking off?
When sometimes I'm negotiating with the client, when I'm writing the listing or when I'm writing an offer.
Okay, 100% agreement with that at the buyer and the listing consultation. That's when your negotiations are going to start. If you will start your negotiations, your expectations, I guess I should say expectations of the negotiation up front right here, this is where you're going to be able to take a lot of hurdles out of your way. Okay, I always think of getting to the clothesline like jumping, you know, closing date, closing line as like jumping hurdles. And the more, if you're as athletic as I am, the more I could move out of my way, the better it would be than hurdling over them, because I'm on a trip, and tripping sometimes causes your contracts to fall through. So you need to set the expectations with your clients before the first showing. At your buyer consultation, you're going to talk about what that process looks like. So when you find a home, you're going to be able to do inspections on it, and you're going to set what they're going to find out. Are you always going to, or find out, you're always going to be able to find something at an inspection. Wouldn't you agree? Has anybody done an inspection so far where it came up 0? Okay, wow, that's fantastic. Like they said, there's nothing. So usually, even with my cleanest house, it will be like 3 things. 1, caulking, a GCI, you know, something minor. I'm like, I think the least expensive repairs I've ever done was like $75 or less. So that's fantastic. So yeah, even brand new houses sometimes require inspections. But now that we're talking about buyers at that point, you're doing a consultation, you're letting them know you're going to do an inspection, and there's going to be inspections, you know, requirements that come up. How about the listing consultation? How might that conversation look different there?
When I do a listing, I will tell them, let's walk through the process of what happens when we get offers and contracts. And there will be a repair period, and expect that they will find something, and that we'll have to negotiate on that. So if you know things that affect structure, safety, the heat and air, that kind of thing, we need to get ahead of those and do them now.
Right. And that's exactly what I would have said. So on this, if you're working with a buyer during this period before you've actually even shown them one house, this is a fantastic script for you. You're going to have the opportunity to do inspections on the home to find out if there's anything that you can't see visually that would make you not want to buy this house. The seller is not required to make repairs. This is all negotiable. Because if you say this up front before they start looking at houses, they understand. Hey, if you've ever been on the listing side and opened up your, I sent you the TRR and you open it up and it has 35 things on it. So I haven't even read the 35 things. Terry, when you get something like that, how do you respond?
Nope. Or see attached inspection report from A to Z.
Yes, oh my gosh. So sometimes when you see those, when you open it up and there's
You become
35
very
things,
defensive, right?
yes, it automatically puts you on the defense.
I just had some buyers that wanted to use A to Z.
Yeah.
Inspection, and I had no idea, like an idiot, I didn't reach out and ask them, hey, is A to Z okay? I was just like, no problem.
They're very
They're not
detailed.
as bad as they used to be.
Yeah, they're very
They
detailed.
picked apart under construction.
Yes, that can
First
happen.
time young buyers that are freaking out.
Yeah.
Nobody's A to Z.
Now, during your consultation, if you tell buyers that you're gonna have that inspection period, but I want you to be thinking, you've already planted that seed in the back of their mind, sellers don't have to do repairs. So they don't have to do repairs. I see, for me in the broker role, I have people that go, well, the seller wouldn't even negotiate on repairs. They wouldn't do anything. I was like, especially in this market, do they have to? No, because if I got a $150,000 house and you're asking for $2,000 worth of repairs, I'm going to put it back on the market. And how many days will it take me to get another offer? Yeah, probably like an hour. So you need to set the expectation with your buyer that we can ask for these repairs, but they may not do these repairs. Okay. And then they're not going to want to put everything that's on the A to Z list there. Now, if you're working on the seller side of things, good seller script, buyers are going to do a home inspection to find out if there are any known issues. Major repair items can often cause a contract to fall through. Imagine the disappointment when you're excitedly packing up only to find out that the buyers are canceling this contract. Would you like to pre-inspect? Would you like to have a pre-inspection done to discover in advance any unknown repairs? Would it be a good idea to start doing potentially some pre-inspections? Has anybody ever done pre-inspections? I know Kyle's team does.
We started doing them on our flips because we didn't necessarily touch all the systems.
Right.
So we started doing them just to make sure that we didn't scare anybody off because there were things we didn't know about.
Right, right.
Is the Zoom on?
Mm-hmm.
Kara's saying that it's asking her it's saying that you have to let her in.
Admit all. Sorry, guys, I didn't see the next batch of y'all. I need a secretary to run my Zoom meetings.
Well, at least I have your husband's phone number.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. I've been waiting. I'm like, okay, my computer's finally going to do it too. So it's going to be for me.
Okay, so we were just talking about when does the consult or the negotiations actually start, and that's going to be at your buyer and listing conversations. So, or consultations. So with your seller script, sellers can sometimes get a little bit defensive. So has anybody ever had a seller that was just super like, oh, they found things that were wrong with my house? I mean, they're just like, it's like, picking out somebody's decor going, oh, this really doesn't look good when they
My house was perfect.
hours. Yeah, it's perfect. So is anybody on the Zoom meeting doing pre-inspections? I know Jerica does pre-inspections. So
I
sometimes
don't.
let me head off some things.
So it's the process.
What do you,
Terry,
No, we get a special deal.
so it's cheaper than a regular inspection.
Well, probably because it's the same home inspector that we use all the time, and he's number one on our list of recommended inspectors. When somebody says, we always give them free. We don't tell them who to use. We always give them free, but he's good.
right. So knowing about, the general fee for having a pre-inspection done, $400. So if you're spending $400 to find out, to keep a contract from falling through, when, you've taken off work and you've packed your things and you've, called the moving trucks, $400 is a pretty small amount to spend to find out if there's going to be some issues later. So that may be helpful with that. All right. zoomed everybody, and now I'm gonna have to move over here. Okay, here's a scenario that I want your input. This needs to, we're gonna do a two-way conversation, you guys. So if I see a defect as I'm showing the house, should I tell the buyer? If that is a concern to you, you can always ask for it in the repair period. What do you think? People at home, feel free to chime in. If that is a concern to you, you're walking through the house, there's a hole in the wall,
No,
the carpet is frayed,
no, you should say if that's concerning, you should bring somebody who knows about that to look at
okay? Can do that.
Those are, they're cosmetic and don't qualify.
Okay, so holes in the wall can actually be problems with the appraisal later, but I have heard people say, well, we'll just ask for that during the inspection period, or the appraiser will call that out and it won't be a big deal. So has anybody ever done a transaction when you're pretty sure that the appraiser would call something out and then he didn't?
Yes.
Lots of times.
Yeah, that happens. That's happened a couple
You're
times.
gonna take a shower?
So luckily we put it on our repair list, but I said, well, I'm gonna put it on the repair list, but I'm pretty sure the appraiser's
yeah.
gonna call it out. Well,
Well,
I
I
must have
thought they
been
were bigger
blinders
too.
on that day because they just didn't call it out. So,
Danny's doing desktop and progress, so.
yep, and they never come in the house. So so the answer to this is, should I say this when we're looking at it? And the answer is going to be no, because from previous, how many repairs does the seller have to make? None. He doesn't have to do anything. So if I'm walking through the house and I'm seeing these defects up front and I know about them up front, when should I address them? Up front. Address those things up front. So if whatever the item is, it would make the buyer not want to buy this house, then you need to address that up front. I mean, if it is obvious there is a leak in the ceiling with the roof, address that in the upfront contract. If there is a hole in the wall, if there is carpet that the dogs have chewed a hole in, or something to that effect. I'm trying to think of things that you would want to.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Stacy.
Oh, sorry, I meant, that was for the dog.
Oh. Okay, so if there is an item that you want addressed up front, do it up front. If you put something in the contract, then the seller is not surprised by that. They know it's coming. That's part of the contract. This has to be fulfilled. It needs to be done. Now, I will tell you, if you're putting repairs in a contract up front, the repair either needs to be done by the time the appraisal is complete. So if the appraiser comes back out, it's in the contract. For instance, we had the house I had under contract, the soffits were coming down. Wanted to make sure that that was not going to be an issue because we were competing, and we put the soffit repair in. I don't know why that's ringing. Maybe it's because I'm on. Sorry. So anyway, we put it in the repair, and they did not have it done by the time the appraisal was done. They will. It is $125 generally is what the trip fee is, but they'll come back out and look at it. But we didn't have to worry about negotiating that in a TRR. So he already knew he was going to have to do it, and he was in agreement with that.
Would it be best if you're gonna put something like that in the contract to say to be completed before the appraisal?
You could, and then it could be done. So that probably would be right. Be complete. Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. Anyone else adding to that? No.
So Peggy, if you
Yes.
put it on like an addendum and not on the actual contract, but you send it with the contract, does that still require the appraiser to check it?
You put it on an addendum instead of the contract. Depends on what type of contract it is. So you could do that on a conventional contract. You cannot do that on an FHA because FHA says we want to see the contract in its entirety. And if they're doing repairs, they're going to want to see that. Do people probably do it? Yes. Should you do it? No. So a couple of scenarios. All right, so now we've talked about they're looking at it. Before you make an offer on a property, run some comps on that house. So, which I know a lot of you are doing anyway, but is this house priced according to the condition? There are lots of houses out there when you're like, oh, the entire neighborhood's selling for $100 a square foot. And this one's in the $70 a square foot. What are they doing when they do that?
Adjusting for condition.
Mhm. So if I buy something, if I'm successful in getting it under contract and it's $70 a square foot when everything else in the neighborhood is $90 a square foot, how likely is it that that seller is going to do thousands of dollars of repairs?
No, they've made the adjustment in their minds.
Right. And the seller has kind of made that decision. So you need to make sure that you're running comps to find out, is the house priced according to the condition that it's in? Can you prep your buyers well ahead of time? If that happens, hey, this house is at $70 a square foot. It's normally houses in this neighborhood, if they had these repairs, sell at this price. The seller is adjusting the price based on the condition. So can you set that expectation up front? Do you think that that might save your deal later? Yeah, probably will. So run comps and make sure that the house is priced accordingly. If the price reflects the condition of the house, taking into account the needed repairs, let the buyer know. And then here's a script for that. This home is priced accordingly with the needed repairs in mind. If the repairs had been done before listing, the listing price would likely have been, and then you're going to fill in the blank for that neighborhood. So if you give the data to your clients, for some reason, the logic of that, not always, because people make a decision sometimes based on emotional needs, but if you give them the data, then they're likely to make a little bit more of a logical decision on that. Has anybody has this worked for anyone in the past? Like, nope, can't think of anything. All right. Okay, before the home inspection takes place, now we've got it under contract. You've already had the conversation with them when you did your buyer consultation. We're going to do inspections. They're going to find a lot of things, but do you tell buyers things sometimes and they don't always remember what you said? Kind of like delivering earnest money within 3 days. So they don't always remember. So your job as the real estate professional is to remind them again, set the expectation. Is anybody else besides me? I don't like surprises. So surprise parties. So I like to plan things. I'm a planner. So does anybody else just love surprises? Like, I probably was the kid that did not like those Jack-in-the-Box things. I just don't. They're just weird. But so I like to set expectations with buyers up front because I don't like surprises. So if I don't like surprises, I'm going to assume they're probably not going to like surprises that are going to end up costing them a lot of money. So unless your buyer is in the market to buy a brand new house, so Terry's like, I get this one. So they are buying a used house and it is going to come with all the wear and tear of a used house. So people buy, or they go and look at houses that were built in like 1960, but in their mind, when it closes, what do they want the house to reflect? Yeah.
It's new to them.
Oh, it's new to me and I need everything fixed from 1960 on. So I had somebody else ask me the other day, they go, well, how come the breaker box isn't to code? I go, well, to code when? You know, to code 1960 when it was built, or the 100 times that they've changed it between now and then. So does anybody at home update all of your electric every time a code changes in the city? Nobody does. Okay.
No.
So when you're in a, Kara's like, I do. Just kidding. So if you are, you have a 1950 house, is it likely going to be grounded? No. The electric's not going to be grounded, and the expectation needs to be set ahead of time of what they're going to encounter during these inspections. Set the expectation report. What are they going to find in an inspection report? What do you hire an inspector to do? Yeah, what do you, I mean, if let's give you this. I pay for a home inspection and he comes back with one thing. House was built in 1980. What are you thinking as a consumer? Yeah, he must not have done very good though. Did he do the inspection? Was it very thorough? Did he check everything? They will ask you if there's not, buyers are funny. If there's not very many things on there, they'll go, are you sure he inspected everything? So did he get in the attic at all and look, does the dishwasher work? I mean, just little things, because they just can't believe that there's not more repairs that might need to be done. So set the expectations of what they're going to find in a report. For an inspector to earn their money, because you're paying a little bit of substantial amount of cash there. They want to make sure that they're getting everything. So the inspector's job is to find all the little stuff, all the big stuff, and all the stuff that's in between. They're going to call out the 50-cent faceplate on your electric switch if it's cracked. They're also going to, call out the crack that runs through the middle of the house that the cat fell in. So everything from that to that is going to be in there. And that's what you want if you're going to pay them $400 to do the inspection. You want a thorough inspection. How much of what is on the report is going to matter? Okay. So looking at it, there's not a lot on the inspection report that's going to be major things for the most part. So the purpose of an inspection is to find the items that the buyer was unaware of concerning the house, and 99% of the items that are on there won't actually matter. They're usually cosmetic or aesthetic, or it's mostly, hey, be aware of this in the future. You might want to keep this in mind. Okay, caulking, roof, age of the hot water tank. Does anybody know what the new standard for what makes a hot water tank old?
I'm sorry, Stacy's trying to get in.
Yeah. Okay. I told you guys, don't let me control this. Because I never look back at that to see who wants it. Sorry.
Is you good now?
I think so. I'll let her in.
Okay, thank you.
I know the new code changes.
Okay.
Gas cabling going in has to be uprated, has to be 18 inches off of the ground, has to be trayed.
Okay. Yep. And that's actually been the 18 inches in the tray and it's been there for a while. But 99% of the time, the repairs won't matter. They're going to put things on the inspection report. They're calling hot water tanks old after 8 years now. So they're in need of replacement after 8 years. Well, don't tell the 22-year-old hot water tank that I just replaced at my house, because it went a little bit longer than that. Okay. So just because it's on the, people look at it as like a doomsday deadline sometimes. Oh, the air conditioner is going to break. It is 5 years old and they said this is when it's going to happen. Anybody been in a house where those items are still ticking right along way on later? So, okay. 1% of the items that you are going to find in an inspection report are probably going to be expenses that the seller or the buyer needs to be paying attention to. What are some major items? And these are going to be considered major items. What do you guys consider major items on a repair list? Okay, roof. Foundation.
Drainage.
Heat and air, drainage, plumbing, which would fall maybe, sometimes under plumbing, depending on what's going on. Okay, electric. All of those things are going to be your major expenses. So when we're talking to a buyer, when the inspection is complete, you will likely get a list of a lot of items. 99% of those items are minor wear and tear that you need to be aware of in the future. We're going to be looking for big ticket items that cost you a lot of money out of pocket, such as the roof, plumbing, electric, HVAC, hot water tank, etc. If those items need repairs, that will likely be what we ask the seller to fix before closing. There is no guarantee that the seller will agree to these repairs. Okay. So if I say that, you haven't even had the home inspection yet, and I'm already telling the buyer, okay, because your buyers will get a home inspection report. If you don't warn them about what's going to happen, are they going to have a heart attack when they get the inspection report? Yes. To them, when they get a 36-page, what was the inspection report? 75-page inspection report. I'm so glad I didn't print that thing the other day. I was like, it just kept going, and there was nothing on it. It was 75 pages long. When they see 75 pages, all red stuff, are they going to be freaking out? To them, in their mind, the house is lucky they didn't make it out, that they made it out alive. It's falling apart. So that can be a little bit overwhelming. But if you prep them ahead of time, okay, this is going to have a lot of stuff on it, and a lot of it's not going to make any difference in this house. We're going to be looking for the major stuff.
Jan uses a script that I like real good with the buyers. She says 90% of what's going to be on this list is your honey-do list once you move.
Perfect. Yep, that is perfectly summarized.
What was it again?
Mainly the focus of safety, livability, or something that actually affects the value.
Yes, Yes, things that will affect the value. Terry, she wants you to repeat your Jan's script.
90% of what you're going to see on your inspection report is your honey-do list for after you move in.
Okay.
But yes, you could say, you know, if you didn't want to go through the list of things, we're looking for things that are a safety concern or that may be an expensive out-of-pocket repair for you later.
We can talk about that later in negotiating, but that's what Dennis is doing in competitive offer situations. He's putting in on his contract, we will limit repairs to health, safety, and structure, which is everything.
Right.
But it sounds better.
Right. So, okay, once your inspection is complete, remember at this point, you haven't even started putting your TRR together yet. So your inspection is complete. You need to talk to your buyers because they're going to have two choices. They're either going to cancel the contract, so by sending over that cancellation, or they're going to decide that they want to ask the seller to make some repairs if there are significant repairs. If there's not, then they'll just move on with the contract. So let's look at this. Take into consideration, sellers will make repairs to sell it, and then they will, sellers will make repairs to sell it. They are not making repairs to live in it. How are those two things different? If I'm making a repair to sell it, or I'm making a repair because I plan to be there for the next 10 years, where those maybe look different.
Yes.
Band-Aid versus something that will be long-term.
Yeah. So I need that water spigot out front fixed. Will you do it for 25 bucks, or should I call the actual plumber who will install it correctly? Because that's going to end up costing me more. If I'm going to live there, I'm going with the professional. If I'm not going to live there, you're getting the guy that whoever can put it together. Okay, poor girl.
If it's electrical, and you need to fix something because it's a fire hazard, do we have to ask them like for the receipt?
You can put that into your TRR, that any paid professional. So if I were asking for someone to do electric work, I would also specify that I want it done by a licensed electrician. So because if not, they've got a YouTube channel and a screwdriver. So be careful with that. And then they'll go, well, what receipt? I don't have a receipt. I did that repair myself. And then you're like, oh no. So yeah, ask for it to be a licensed electrician and then providing the receipt. Yeah. So, okay, those are going to be two different things. So I want you to be thinking about that and having that conversation with your buyers. This might be something to think about before you even write the TRR. If your buyers are going to be asking for repairs, consider asking for a credit instead, because then the buyers can do repairs hiring someone that they trust after closing. So not someone that they don't know. And then double check to make sure that you're not maxed out on closing costs. What are your thoughts on that? Has anybody done that? Tried it? Okay, how'd it work out?
Perfectly. At the smoke odor damage,
Uh-huh.
we just want to hire a company on our own after we close, give us $1,000 after closing.
Okay, worked perfect. Okay. So anybody else? Jesse? Trying to think if we've had any that we've done. Sometimes is it easier for sellers to give money in lieu of repairs?
Heck yeah, there's one we mess with.
Yeah, I don't want to be taking off work
I'll do
scheduling.
that as the listing agent sometime. Let's just give them $1,000 and tell them go up.
Right, because then they're like, I don't know a plumber. I don't know an electrician. I don't know. Okay, so let's get this
That's
done.
the magic of a home warranty. That's what I just did.
Right.
I mean, I just was like, how about a home warranty? And they're like, yeah.
Yeah, give them some money and offer a home warranty. So sometimes that can be a solution that gets you to closing, which is your ultimate goal, is to get to closing.
Peggy, I had one just recently where they wanted to do that. And one of the repairs was replacing the subflooring underneath the tub. And it was the, because it was the conventional, wood raised foundation. Anyway, they wanted to do that. But because I told my nephew, I said, you don't know what else they may get into and find that needs to be repaired. I advise them not to do it and go ahead and have it repaired, because it could have ended up in a lot more, a greater expense than what they said it was.
And occasionally it could. I mean, because there are some unknowns. And if you renovate enough properties, you know that you get into unknowns.
So it just depends on what the repairs are.
Okay, Jesse?
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say, as buyer's agent, you just need to make sure if they offer money in lieu of the repair, that it's actually going to be enough to fix the repair.
Cover the cost of it, yeah.
Or the buyer knows. that
Just
they
understand.
fix something.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then that would be a good idea to, if you're going to do money in lieu of repairs, to get some estimates done from, you know, on your side. Is it a good idea to sometimes get your own estimates? Yeah, but especially if you're doing money in lieu of repairs. Oh, my handyman said I could fix that for $500. And then you close and you find out it's $1,000 plus, you know, for you to have it done on your own. So, because
But
that
you find
handyman's
most of the
gone.
inspection reports now have estimates attached to
They
them.
do not, mine do not. Do yours?
Mhm.
So, yeah. My inspectors that I use, I specifically ask them not to put inspection numbers on it. Mostly because it's an exorbitant amount, you
Well,
know.
they're usually high, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's a little bit, sometimes in my opinion, too high. You know, like they'll say this faceplate over here that costs 50 cents, they'll put $75 on it because they're like, well, if I had to hire an electrician to come out, I'm like, to replace a faceplate? So my daughter did that when she was like 16. So anyway, yeah, so no, I
YouTube and
don't.
a screwdriver.
Yeah, exactly. YouTube and a screwdriver and you are set. Okay, if your buyer chooses to ask for repairs, so sometimes, you know, they're out of town or they don't have a trusted list and they just want to have them done. Sometimes it goes that way. So if your buyers are going to ask for repairs to be completed before closing, do your best to get your repair estimates before you put these on a TRR. So when you're in your inspection period and you've got 10 days to do your inspection, should you be waiting till day 9 or 10 to do inspections? No. Get
Never.
them done on the front end of your inspection period because you're probably going to need to get some more people in there to start taking a look at these things. So if you need, you know, air conditioners, people don't, unfortunately, I like to think people jump when I snap and they just don't. And it's always so disappointing. So make sure that you're giving them plenty of time and room. Have your buyers make a list of major items that need repair and put them in order of importance. And this is not necessarily reflective, you put them on the TRR in order of importance, but you and the buyer have had a discussion about, here's the most important thing. I want to ask for these things, but these are the most important. Is that going to help you when you start to negotiate with the listing agent about what needs to actually be done? Okay, I need to know what my clients, if it's something that they're like, I don't really care if that gets done or not. I kind of really want them to, but I don't really care. Then I'm not going to the mat over something like that. But if it's a major repair where they're like, yeah, I'm not buying this house unless it's done, then I know that that's going to be a little bit more of a discussion for me. Okay, do not put minor items on a TRR. This actually is like my super pet peeve. Right, I'd say this one is right behind, please see inspection report. I think you ought to lose your real estate license if you put see report. So, okay, don't put minor items on your TRR. Remember, talk to your buyers. We need to look for major stuff. If your seller opens up a TRR and sees 35 items on there, they didn't even read it. They automatically, like you said, they get defensive and they just automatically, I just want to cancel it. Buyer's asking for all of that. I'm just not doing it. And then when you start looking at it, it's like, weed the flower bed, caulk behind the sink, you know, little minor things. How much time are you spending with this buyer before you get them under contract?
Too much.
How many hours do you think you've invested at this point with a buyer?
Could be a lot in today's market.
Yeah. So I would say on average, 20 plus hours between the talking on the phone, between the phone, the text messages, the actual showing of the properties, the negotiations on actually getting it under contract. You're probably around 20 hours and you're going to let your contract bust over a $3 tube of caulk. So I want you to think about that. So, and sometimes you have to say that to your buyers, you know, do you really want this transaction to fall through over a $3 tube of caulk? Because you just spent $450 on an appraisal. So, all right, start discussing the deal breakers with your clients. You as their agent, whether you're on the selling side or on the buy side, you need to know what the deal breakers are to your clients. They're not buying this house if this isn't done. And then, so another script for you is if you if we send this TRR to the seller and they choose not to do a few items on the list, which one of these that we have listed would make you walk away from this transaction? Because they may say, when I'm doing my TRRs and they get the repair report, I always say, put together your list and I'll put together my list as a real estate professional, and we're going to compare what those look like. So occasionally I will have there will be some things on there that you need to work through. Tell me why that's important to you. Well, I just want the seller to put it on there. Is that a major item? No, they just want to add it. So, and sometimes you can talk them into not putting these little minor items on there, but you need to know what their walkaway items are. Now, which one would be nice if the seller would complete, but they're not deal breakers. So having that discussion before you've even sent that TRR over. Okay, as you go back and forth with the buyer and the seller, it is important that you remain non-emotional, okay? If you freak out, they freak out. It is like when, your animals at home, I hate to say your buyers and sellers are like your pets, but they kind of are. If you start freaking out and your dog's like running around like, what? So same thing with buyers. If you come in with it and you go, oh my gosh, did you see that inspection report? They're freaking out before they've even opened the PDF. So same thing with the seller. Oh my gosh, they sent the TRR. Oh my gosh. I mean, like their anxiety level is just like, way up here before they haven't even looked at it yet and they're still freaking out. So keep in mind, you're the Switzerland in this group, okay? Now, when you have a TRR, when you're on the seller side of things, before you freak out and before you show it to your seller, you need to be working on solutions for them. I don't like to take a TRR to a seller with just like, oh, here it is, figure it out, sorry. So if you're on the sales side of things, because you're going to brace yourself, you're going to get that TRR from somebody that put the 65 things on it. So you need to have already gone through that list and itemized important and not important, and then have a ballpark idea and give them solutions. As a real estate professional, they have the air conditioner on the list, it's doing this, we could do this, or we could do this. I have a repair person, would you like their number? So, or you can offer them money in lieu. As long as people have an avenue to go to, it's like when you get those mice running through cages, when they run up against that wall and then they get anxious and frustrated. If you give them, you can go this way or you can go this way. What do you want to do? Okay. Gives them a little bit of peace of mind. Now, remind your buyers that, yes.
I have not had the TRR from hell yet. I'm worried about it because I know they're out there.
Not wood, girl.
How do you handle it if you have the listing and you get that from the buyer's agent? Do you have a conversation with the buyer's agent first saying, what are you doing? Or
well, I'm gonna say I probably wouldn't approach it like that. What the hell's wrong with you? Usually does not go over well. So if I got one that was extensive like that, I usually will ask the buying agent. So this is a pretty extensive list. Is there anything on here that was more important to your buyers than others?
Okay,
Sometimes
so you still kind of same script about what are the deal breakers? Let's break this down.
Yep.
Okay.
It's just that kind of agent that gets in the way.
Yes.
We had a house that had like 35 items on it, and I'm going through it with the seller to see if we knocked them all off before we re-inspect. And the buyer shows up, just driving by and sees the cars outside and stops, which you shouldn't have done. And he announces to us, well, I really only wanted 2 of those things. My realtor put all the rest on. I just let her call her up and punch her out.
Right. So
sometimes we get in our own way.
Yep. I would say 90% of the time it's the real estate agent that giving because they choose not to be non-emotional, and they're like, oh my gosh, if it were my house, I would. Yeah. It's, get everything I can get. Yep. It's we got to do battle mentality thing. I say this all the time and I probably offend the masses. So you're all here. Why not? 4 weekends in a class and a C on a test. Bam, you're a real estate agent. That does not make you a good one. Okay?
Ouch.
Yeah, it's kind of painful, but that, you know, where you go from, I got a license on is a huge factor in what separates
I
people.
was one of those that advises Steve Webber, so I worked with him on the first deal. He said, always approach your buyer or seller with the words, great news.
Yeah.
And lead with the positive.
Right.
Always. And I have taken that and I use it
Yeah.
always, no matter what it's like.
No
Yep.
matter how low that offer is.
Yeah,
So
you
you're
get an
not-
offer, 20,000, great news, we got an offer.
Yeah.
So bad news is, it's not a good one. Yeah, for sure. So, all right, keep reminding your buyer and seller. Sometimes you have to keep reminding your buyer and seller of what their ultimate goal is. Now, what is the buyer's ultimate goal at the end of this? Buy the house. Okay, they fell in love with it for a reason. They wanted to get in it. So, and then sometimes you have to remind sellers, because what is the P word that you hear people throw around? That's the line in the sand for them. It's the principle of the thing. Oh my gosh, when I hear that, I'm like, I don't even want to know what you guys thought the P word was. So yes, when you get to the principle of things, they're like, it's the principle of things. I'm not fixing that. It's almost like they've just dug their heels in. So sometimes if you can come to them with solutions instead of just a problem, that's going to help you tremendously in your negotiation period, so especially if you're on the listing side of things.
All
and
of
you get
this,
that.
because the TRR is really a one-way ask, it changes based on the market. Like the TRR from hell in a seller's market is one person's problem.
Yes.
The TRR from hell in a buyer's market is the other guy's problem.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, it can be a really big deal. Sometimes people are like, well, I paid $5,000 over asking price and I want everything fixed. Okay, so, and that conversation is going to come up. How have you guys handled that so far? I paid over, because in this market, I'm paying over asking price and I want it all.
This just happened, literally. And I said, they have 3 offers over asking price, right? We want this house. We have to buy this house and not ask for anything.
Right. Okay, that's an excellent answer. Anyone else? Nobody? Okay, so sometimes I will remind my sellers, they're like, ah, I can't believe they asked for that. So when you're coming with solutions and you say, okay, well, let's get an estimate on what these things cost. So we recently had this with one of our sellers, and they're like, they've asked for this, this, and this, and this. So, okay, let's find out how much it's going to cost. And it ended up being like $3,000. They're like, that's $3,000 worth of repairs. And I said, well, they gave you $5,000 over asking, so technically you're pocketing the other 2. Okay,
Yeah,
so
but then the difficult thing, so they go, well, you listed it, you didn't list it for enough.
yeah,
The reason it sold for more is because they had no value.
that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. Okay, so I want to talk about what you guys have encountered so far on the negotiations. What are some scenarios that have come up where you're, and like I said, there are some instances where you're just not going to get things worked out. When it gets down to the principle of things, obviously our ultimate goal is to finally get things closed. If I had to end with something, I would say prep work. You know, prep work, prepare people for what's going to happen, be the solution for them instead of just the problem. You don't want to be the source of the problem. You want to be the solution of the problem for them. So if I'm on the buy side, well, we're asking for this, but this is like a $10 repair. Are you sure you want to put this on the list? Well, what if it happens if I'm a new agent and I don't know how much things cost? What can I do? Yeah, ask somebody else. You got an entire office full of experienced agents. Hey, do you think there's anything new under the sun in a house? No, there is nothing new coming up with the house. Water heaters are old, water heaters break. Air conditioners need to be fixed, combed out, insulation put on. There's just, you know, so many things that need to be happened that have happened before. Somebody knows how much that cost. Put it on the office Facebook page. Hey, have you had this repair come up? About ballpark, what did it cost when you had it done? That way you can go back and have an educated conversation with your clients about that, and then giving them solutions. But what are, anybody come and run into anything kind of unique? I know Jesse, Terry.
I have with a buyer, he's looking for something that's like really difficult, and so I called on this manufactured home that sits on 9 acres, and I called the agent because I'm not on the MLS yet. He was telling me all the things that was wrong with the house, and my emotions just like went like all over over the place because I was like, one, I don't know why you're being dishonest because now you're not even making me want to bring my clients in the house.
Right.
It was a hot foreclosure, had no electricity, and someone stole the septic tank.
I should feel accepted.
Septic tank.
Wow.
That's some dedication.
And I literally was like, after he said they stole the septic tank, I was like, sir, this is my first like actual real call to an agent, and this is very interesting.
Well, he did that to make sure that you understand that
Which
only
he-
certain buyers can even buy this house.
Well,
So
which
don't
he
waste
did-
your time looking at it.
No, but he didn't even know that. Like I was like new in this industry, but I was just like, I said I don't even know what to say to you besides I don't think that my client's interested
So-
because I was like, this is just like so much.
Right. In that situation, price overcomes repairs. So if I get the house cheap enough, I won't care what the repairs
Well,
are.
and he was like, we already had a contract, but it fell through because no people like.
Finance, it, won't finance it. So,
Yeah, so it was like,
that'll fall under the can't be salvaged category.
Yeah, whenever I ended the phone call, I said, good luck with your listing.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah.
I do a ton of new construction, and I get frustrated sometimes when the buyer's agents don't know the contract. Because the new construction contract clearly says that the builder has a right to complete punch list items after inspection, after closing. So we busted a contract the other day because we didn't have paint touch-ups done and a few cosmetic items, and the realtor got in the way and said, we just need to walk from this builder. They're not going to take care of it.
Right.
I don't know if I told you her name.
I would already know
Always
it.
did, you would know.
Yeah.
And
Is it a first name agent? Like they don't need a last name because they just have that first name?
No, this one uses both.
Okay.
But
Does everybody else use both?
right. No. If I just mention your first name, you know, irrelevant. But anyway, you know, the seller had, the seller probably could have sued for performance because we have the right to do things post-close in
Right.
a construction contract.
Right.
Because, and in this case, it was purely cosmetic stuff. It was nothing to do with mechanicals.
Right.
anything like that.
I think as an agent representing buyers, you need to be super careful that you do understand the contract. Can you put decorative items on a TRR?
You can.
You can. Should you, per the contract? No.
No.
It says no
You're
cosmetics.
setting yourself up for a deal that won't happen.
Right. I mean, if you go, wow, I've spent like 30 hours trying to find you the perfect house, and we did, and I'm going to do everything I can to just bust it. You know, because I feel like that's what some agents do. I'm just going to find everything I could just to annihilate this. So, and I've had agents do that. They purposely went through the house going, oh my gosh, if they didn't fix that, I still wouldn't buy this house. And then the next thing I know, they're standing in my office saying, I can't believe this contract fell through. I'm so mad. I'm like, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. So don't point out all the things you're so mad about. You're Switzerland. You don't get to be mad about things. Non-emotional. Because you're constantly talking buyers and sellers off the ledge. I don't know if you guys know that you're in the counseling business. So, but flip your name tag over. It should say counselor on one side. Then you can flip it back over and be their real estate agent. Because sometimes you're like, get back in the window. It's going to be fine. There's no need to jump today. So what are some other scenarios that you might have run into?
I had an unusual one where I was representing both sides.
Mhm.
It's actually my grandmother's house. We're selling it as is.
Okay.
The buyer knew that, wrote his offer, and then he decided to ask for repairs. And I'm trying to not let the deal fall.
Right.
It's a really good deal. I guess it turned out he was trying to get an insurance company he was gonna hire, which was
USAA.
USAA, who's afraid it wouldn't be insured. Ended up kind of writing in an addendum that he could have his own people come in, make repairs himself before we even closed, and it was like very stressful.
Right.
Ended up not having anything.
You do that? We were just like, you can have, somebody can be irresponsible for any damage done. We-
Paying for it, yeah.
Money lost, you know, just.
Right.
That's an odd one.
Right. Yeah, you know, and occasionally buyers do want to do that. You know, everybody goes in thinking they know what the terms of the contract are, such as is, and then they like to throw that kink in the wheel. In this market, that's not going to work very well because you're going to be finding yourself on the street looking for a new house.
What happens if that scenario happened and the buyer ended up backing out? They put down new carpet and not pay the installer.
I wrote in the addendum that they had to pay any professionals loss was on that, but I wrote it out, like.
The only thing you need to be really careful with that is sometimes you're like, thanks buyer for putting new flooring in my house. But you need to make sure that when that was done, if I were going to be on the listing side, I would ask for a paid receipt that the contractor that they hired had been done, because you don't want that contractor to be able to come put a mechanic's lien on the property because they had not been paid. So if you allow buyers to come in advance to do their own repairs, which happens, just ask for a paid receipt so that you know it's clear. Okay, so.
Where I see it gets challenged sometimes is when you have a listing and that person is going out to buy another house. And maybe you even got the listing sold. So you're starting the whole deal and you set the expectations with your seller who's now a buyer that, hey, we're just looking for the big stuff.
Right.
And then we submit our TRR for big stuff. And then the inspections happen on the listing.
And they get the 65
A to
list.
Z 75 pages and they're like, what the hell? You just told me this. So it's a real fine line sometimes. And you have to say, well, not everybody, you know.
Not everybody educates their clients.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
and that is true.
We don't have to get more out on what we're buying.
Right, right. So yes, and that happened. So how did you handle that?
We said no on a lot of the things on the listing side.
Right.
We said no.
Right.
And you know, I handle some of those things like you do. Will you discount your commission? No. Will we do that? No.
Right. No.
And most of the time it's like, well, okay, we asked. You still want the house? Yes or no?
Right.
So it's okay to be tough. Now you have to be careful in this market, like you said, because you know, but if you have a buyer on a $150,000 house, you better take it as it is, unless it's an FHA or VA requirement, because somebody else
is going to be buying it. So if you're at home and you couldn't hear Terry on that, he has a seller that became a buyer and they're selling their house. And when they submitted their TRR, they put major stuff, but received a TRR with a lot of frivolous things on it. So, and at that point, I would go back and say, okay, you know, it becomes a seller's decision at that point. They've asked for these 30 plus things. Are you willing? Let's talk about what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. Okay, what would you like to do without regretting your decision? And then we just pick through the list and then send it back to the buyer. So, you know, unfortunately, you are negotiating between the buyer and the seller, but sometimes you're negotiating the two agents because, like Terry said before, sometimes agents can't get out of their own way. I mean, it's like, you just want to know, how many transactions do you have busted here? And how many of them were probably instigated by you? So I don't ever go into things thinking I'm going to blow this thing up. So not transactions.
So earlier you guys were talking about, and I see it on TRRs, repair made by licensed plumber, licensed electrician. Some of those, and where do you draw the line on toilet tightened by licensed plumber?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and I mean, we'll cross off the by licensed and send it back.
Sure.
A lot of times, and even simple electrical stuff.
Right.
An outlet's cracked, it needs to be replaced.
Right.
You know, where do you draw the line on that when you're writing up the TRR?
Right.
Even?
For me, I always look at things like, if somebody that didn't know what they were doing and watched the YouTube video, is this going to cause my house to burn down? The electric panel needs to be replaced. Yep.
Well,
I'm going to put that by electric. Yeah. But, you know, honestly, even changing out like GFCIs, that's not a difficult task. So people get kind of, you know, so some of that I feel like comes with experience, but if you're in the business and you're not super experienced, ask, you know, what looks like a big deal to you. Does everybody attend their inspections? Okay. You need to be attending your inspections. You need to know what they're talking about on some of these lists. And then when the repair people come, whether you're on the list side or the buy side, when repair people come to give the estimate, you need to be there. So, because you need to be talking to these professionals about, because I've had plumbers come out and go, I'm not even sure why they're hiring me for this. The seller could probably do this. So
I go to inspections if possible, even on the listing side. I don't go to attend the whole inspection. If the inspection's at 10, I'll show up about 11:15 for two reasons. I want to meet the agent, introduce myself. I want to be in front of anything on fire that's major. And it's a whole lot easier to negotiate with that other agent if there's a face.
Yes.
Than it is if it's just, hey man, anytime she calls me, she's such a bitch.
Yeah.
You know, versus.
Yeah.
So I try to go on the listing side if I can.
So, yeah, and
You
kind of
don't stay, I don't stay.
right, piggybacking on what he said, we talked about negotiations start before you even show a buyer. Sometimes negotiations start before you ever had the buyer. So you need to be attending events with real estate agents outside of your office, okay? Getting to know people, going to these, Chamber of Commerce meetings or these board social gatherings. That's where the real connections are made. So when you get into a friendly relationship with someone from another company and you're doing a cross sale, that makes those negotiations so much easier. So, Jesse and I were doing one with Kim Price and she's like, she goes, I'm going to talk to my seller. She goes, for this with different things because we're friends. If that had been anyone else, she might've been ready to go to the mat over it, but she's like, because of that connection. So do your social, I hate to say we're socializing for that, purpose, but yeah, it will make your life easier getting to know people, just like anything else. Okay, I'd like to kind of open this up for if you guys have any specific questions on negotiations. I know this definitely is not a magic bullet class. There is no magic bullet in real estate if you figured that out.
I learned a lesson that I'd like to share.
Sure.
I think, I had my first buyers and the deal should have busted. The deal came down to the TRR took forever. I couldn't get the negotiations between people. I couldn't get it returned. It was like, so it comes down to the last day and we were stuck on trim in the house, right? And the trim job was not complete in the house. The trim everything and not caulked anything. The deal should have busted. I volunteered to do the trim finish myself.
Right? You're gonna put that in your book of real estate when I get too busy not to do.
Right. And I made a mistake by doing this. Now the deal went through because I did it. But then, I'm not kidding. 12 hours doing that job, get the trim, right? Doing that and to get the job, and I got it all done, and everybody's happy, right? But I don't want to do that again.
Right.
And I don't want to deal with this.
Right.
So I have new buyers and I'm signing on Saturday. And I'm going to try this. I'm going to go, let me walk you through a scenario. And I want to tell them what the market looks like to people who want to present a TRR with 36 items on it. And then have these by principles. What that looks like is we're not in the house buying business. We're in the problem finding business. And what we're going to do is we're going to find problems and we're going to lose a house. We're going to find problems and we're going to lose a house. And we're going to do that until we learn we're not in the problem finding business. We need to be in the house buying business.
Right.
But we're going to miss 3 houses that we really love.
Right.
In that process.
That's a good way to set that up.
Right.
Yep. I think that's a great way to set that up. So anyone else have anything that you want to talk about? Now, I want to say one more thing about the least popular way to solve some problems during negotiations in a TRR situation, when the lines in the sand have been drawn. Buyer's drawn theirs, seller, and there's like this little impasse period. Sometimes as a real estate agent, you just need to handle it, okay? You just need to handle it. So when I have had sellers fight over like a $200 repair. Deal's gonna bust. They're both walking away. They drew their lines in the sand, $200. Am I gonna lose a $12,000 commission over a $200 fix?
Nope.
Okay.
Some people will.
Some people will.
No way.
So as a real estate, they're like, oh, they're fighting over $500 and they're just, it's busting. I'm like, why are you losing a $12,000 commission over $500? I'm going to give you if I give you $500 and you give me 12 back, we're going to do that deal all day long. So
Bob Horner and I always say, what's 100% of nothing?
Exactly. So like I said, that always needs to, I never offer that solution up front. No way that's coming out of my mouth up front.
So what are you saying? You're cutting your commission or you're paying for yourself?
It depends on who it is. So if it's on the listing side, if I have the listing, so I've done it both ways on the listing. I go, you know what? I'm going to just cover that repair for you. I understand that that is a deal breaker for you, and I definitely want you to move. So I'm going to just cover that repair for you. Who looks like the hero? Yeah, you're not getting a closing gift. That is your closing gift. So now, if I do that for my seller, how many referrals am I getting from them? So, because they're like, oh, she just gets taken care of. It's just done. So on the buy side of things, you can just, depending on what it is, hey, I know that's such a huge deal. What if I got you a, $500 gift card from Home Depot and let you take care of that after closing?
And then that's a write-off for you, isn't it?
Sure.
It is, flying expenses.
Yeah.
But my labor is not a write-off.
No, you just get to
It's
log that on
smarter
your
to give them
calendar.
$500.
Yeah, so, or, offer to pay the contractor. So, yeah, hire somebody. Hey, it's not a big deal. The seller's not gonna do that, but I tell you what, I'm gonna take care of the contractor that's gonna get out and make that repair. And then you just do it. So so you're looking at future business at that point, because now people are referring to you at that. Did it cost you a little bit of money out of pocket? Yeah, but at least you went home with a check, because the alternative was that you were not getting one.
Now my referral is, I know a great trim guy, call Tom.
Yeah, you are the referral. So,
Now, if you're friends with the other, like, let's say I'm on the buyer side and you're friends with the listing agent and they say, hey, this is gonna cost $500, let's split it, 250, what do you think?
yeah, you can always ask.
Sure.
Yeah, because everybody wants to get to closing. Nobody wants things to bust. But like I said, that needs to 100% be your last option. Never offer that up front, because it gives you an opportunity to come in as the hero. So don't say, hey, if the seller won't pay for that, I'll cover it. That's never coming out of my mouth, not one time ever. So, and I would say, how many things have I ever had to pay for?
Have a hot tub, have a refrigerator.
So, but on a year-to-year basis, how many times do you have to come out of pocket to make repairs because
I
for buyers and
just
sellers?
did our tax thing and we were less than $1,000 last year on 132 transactions.
There you go.
Okay,
So I'd say that's probably equivalent to what we pay for. I mean, we rarely cover things out of pocket.
if you're paying out very often, you're either not educating your buyer or seller at a time, or you're negotiation skills.
Yeah, I'd say if it's probably happening more than 10 times a year, come talk to me. Let's figure out and pinpoint some problems here. So, all right, does anybody else have any questions? Hopefully this kind of was what you were hoping this class would be, and that you found it helpful. If you have any insight on something that you would like to see more of, I'd be happy to tweak and adjust, because this is the first time I've covered this specifically. So I appreciate Zoom people. Thank you for coming.
Can we get access to that PowerPoint?
Yeah, yeah, I'll send it out. Sure, okay, absolutely. So I'll have Ashley do it, because clearly I can't even run Zoom.
I did, from the dude that I did that first deal with, I did kind of learn. He kind of, yeah, there was a game to it.
Yeah.
That I watched, the way that they had the list and the way he presented the list. And then all of a sudden, the two top things on the list went away. And he stacked them that way to make people think, these are the priorities, these are the big thing. I'll take it away. What you really want is this third little thing.
Right. So that's why I said not all TRRs are in order of importance, but you working with your buyer need to know the order of importance. So because you'll know where to push and where to pull on those. So okay, thank you guys on Zoom. We're ending. Does anybody have any questions?
Repeater thing, yeah.
All right, see y'all.